No matter how pretty your dress is, Maya, everyone knows you'll always belong at the bottom. In a locked classroom with the cameras off, Maya, a brilliant black student, was pinned by two classmates as her white teacher ripped her cherished dress apart, exposing her in front of laughing eyes. Her dignity seemed shattered, her body and soul left raw for their entertainment. But just as the last thread tore, the door crashed open. Her father, Federal Judge Harrison, stormed in with police and FBI, catching the tormentors red-handed. What began as a teacher's cruel attack unraveled a town-wide conspiracy revealing corruption, silenced victims, and a legacy of injustice desperate to stay hidden. Want to see how the tables turn? Hit subscribe, watch until the end, and witness how truth scorches even the darkest secrets. Every student at Riverside High knew the day's unspoken ritual. The history classroom was not just a place to learn, but an arena where power was performed, prejudices rehearsed, and some wounds never healed. At the center of today's spectacle stood Maya, 17, dark-skinned, solemn, her braided hair neatly tied, her posture ramrod straight as if bracing herself against an invisible storm. Even her silence carried a weight that unsettled the room. Mrs. Porter, 35, surveyed her students like a warden patrolling a cell block. She wore a tailored gray suit and a thin, almost reptilian smile, her manicured nails tapping on a stack of graded essays. It was common knowledge that Mrs. Porter's standards were elastic, stretching and snapping depending on the color of the student's skin. She held up the first paper. Let's see who still understands the meaning of the Constitution. Papers shuffled down the rows, names called, grades given, faces hopeful or resigned. When she reached Maya, Mrs. Porter paused for effect, letting the tension curdle. She dangled Maya's essay between two fingers as if the paper itself was contaminated. Maya Grace Harrison, she intoned, her voice cold and clear. You must have had help with this. A murmur rippled across the room. Maya met her teacher's gaze, steady but weary. No, ma'am. I wrote it myself. I spent the weekend. Mrs. Porter cut her off, lips curling in disdain. Don't lie. People like you don't use words like inalienable rights or original intent. Did your grandmother help you or did you borrow it from somewhere online? She slammed the essay onto Maya's desk, the red mark bleeding across the page like an accusation. A thick silence smothered the air. Maya's cheeks flushed. She sat rigid, jaw clenched, refusing to shrink, refusing to cry. All around her classmates stared, some pitying, some amused, some quietly relieved it wasn't them. Not satisfied, Mrs. Porter moved in for the kill. You know, she announced to the class, it's remarkable what a little extra attention gets you in this country. Scholarships, free lunches, college tours, but effort, talent. Some of us have to actually earn our place. Brandon, the broad-shouldered captain of the football team, snickered from the back row. Yeah, it pays to be lucky, he muttered, just loud enough for Maya to hear. The comment stung, but she ignored him. Mrs. Porter's gaze landed on Maya's hair. Thick, natural, proudly braided. And honestly, Maya, you'd make a better impression if you didn't bring that wild hair to class. There are standards here at Riverside. A low, nervous chuckle ran through the room. Maya's hands balled into fists beneath her desk. She felt the old anger rising, that familiar cocktail of humiliation and fury, but she wouldn't give Mrs. Porter the satisfaction. She straightened her shoulders and stared straight ahead, her silence more defiant than any outburst. Seeing her target unmoved, Mrs. Porter's tone hardened, her voice dropping to a whisper only Maya could hear. You can fool the system for a while. But you can't fool me. People like you. People from nowhere never get far, no matter how hard they try. Remember that. Maya looked down, refusing to meet those icy eyes. She counted her breaths one by one like a soldier under fire. If she said a word, she knew it would all come pouring out. Rage, pain, the urge to stand and scream that she was more than their labels, more than their cruel little boxes. But the walls of Riverside High were built to muffle those screams. Mrs. Porter turned back to the class. Let's move on. Open your books. Brandon, why don't you start reading? Her authority unquestioned, her cruelty unchecked. But as Mrs. Porter lectured, her eyes kept flicking back to Maya, searching for a crack, a tear, a sign of surrender. She found none. Instead, Maya sat upright, head held high, jaw set. There was dignity even in her suffering, and that more than anything seemed to enrage Mrs. Porter. At the bell, as students gathered their things, Mrs. Porter leaned in, her voice dropping to a razor-sharp whisper. Go ahead, Maya. Hold your head high for now, but remember, Riverside has a way of putting people like you back in your place. Sooner or later, even the loudest birds get their wings clipped. Maya didn't answer. She didn't flinch. She simply stood, gathered her battered essay, and walked out, her back unbowed. Across the room, Brandon watched with a wolfish grin, tapping his phone, already plotting. He caught Mrs. Porter's gaze. Just for a moment, a signal passed between them, silent, but unmistakable. Something ugly was about to begin. Lunch hour at Riverside High was a spectacle of cliques and commotion, a river of laughter and swagger winding through the glossy halls. But for Maya, every step to the cafeteria felt like a trek through enemy territory. She kept her chin up, her eyes locked forward, but the undercurrent of whispers trailed after her. Gossip, jealousy, suspicion. Brandon and Marcus stood by the soda machine, their varsity jackets like banners of untouchable privilege. Marcus nudged Brandon, nodding toward Maya as she balanced her lunch tray, weaving through the crowded tables. Brandon's eyes glinted with anticipation. Watch and learn, he smirked. Just as Maya passed, Brandon slammed his shoulder into her. Her tray jerked. Spaghetti and bright red sauce sloshed across her chest and down her jeans. The room fell silent for half a heartbeat, then burst into laughter, sharp and ugly. Marcus whipped out his phone, already recording. Smile for the camera, superstar, he sneered. Trash of the town. Just where you belong, covered in red like you're headed back to the kitchen. Maya tried to steady her breath, feeling eyes burn into her. She clenched her fists, jaw set, refusing to let them see her break. But Brandon wasn't finished. Tell me, Maya, does your family even have a table, or do you all just eat off the floor? His voice was loud, calculated, pitched so every ear could hear. Bet your mama would be proud. Oh, wait. She's not even around, is she? A ripple of gasps moved through the crowd. Maya froze, the sting of humiliation nearly overwhelming. She looked up, but not a single teacher in sight. Only faces, some entertained, some uneasy, most simply silent. Marcus zoomed in, circling her with the camera. She's trying to act all Harvard, but everyone knows you can't scrub the dirt off a street rat. He snickered. Even that hair looks like it's trying to escape. Maya wiped her face, her dignity a fragile shield. She managed, voice steady. Is that all you have, Brandon? Or is it just easier to throw food than to read a book? Brandon's grin tightened. Careful, princess. There's a pecking order here, and your kind always winds up at the bottom. He flicked sauce from his fingers onto her shoe, deliberate and slow. Better watch your step. The phone kept recording. Laughter stung the air. Maya gathered what remained of her pride, turned, and walked out, leaving a trail of red on the spotless tiles. The echoes of mockery chased her down the hall. When she reached the restroom, she scrubbed at the stains, hands trembling. Each word, each sneer clung to her skin more stubbornly than the sauce. She pressed her forehead to the cool tile, forcing the tears back. Not here, not now. But outside, the machine kept rolling. Within minutes, the video was online, captioned, edited, already gathering likes and cruel comments. Riverside's welfare queen should have stayed outside with the janitors. Another handout gone wrong. For every like, Maya's world shrank a little smaller. The rest of the day passed in a haze. In the hallways, students shot glances, some amused, some pitiful. Maya avoided them all. She ducked into the library, hiding in the back stacks, holding her breath as if the books could shield her. When the final bell rang, Brandon made his way to the faculty offices. He knocked twice, then slipped into Mrs. Porter's room. She didn't look up from her desk. She was studying a thick folder, nails tapping with agitation. "You did what I asked?" Mrs. Porter asked, her tone clipped. Brandon tossed his phone on the desk. "It's all over. She'll wish she never showed up here." Mrs. Porter smiled, a brittle satisfaction in her eyes. She slid the folder toward him. "Look inside." Brandon opened it. Inside charts, grades, lists. One name circled in red. Maya Grace Harrison. "She's at the top." Mrs. Porter said, "Do you know what that means?" Her voice dropped venomous. "If she keeps those grades, you lose the foundation for excellent scholarship and I lose everything. I've covered for you for this school for years. We can't let that little charity case ruin our futures." Brandon's jaw worked. "She's just a nobody. She'll quit after today." "She'd better." Mrs. Porter hissed. "Because I need that money more than she'll ever understand. And you want to keep your golden boy image? Then make sure she doesn't come near that scholarship. Not ever." Brandon glanced at the folder. Realization dawning. It wasn't just cruelty. It was calculated, desperate, and ugly. He nodded. "She won't make it through another week." Mrs. Porter's eyes hardened. "Make her afraid to show her face. I need that scholarship, Brandon, and you need your future. Don't let me down." He left, heart pounding, carrying more than just orders, carrying the weight of Mrs. Porter's desperation and his own emptiness. Back in the girls' restroom, Maya scrubbed her shirt one last time, staring at the mirror until her reflection blurred. She thought of her grandmother at home, of the shame she'd have to hide. She blinked away the tears, set her jaw, and walked out, head low, shoulders trembling. As she hurried down the front steps of Riverside, the last light of day caught the red stain still clinging to her shirt. Maya clutched her books to her chest, breath ragged, and ran. Ran from the laughter, from the phone screens, from the promise Mrs. Porter had whispered only hours before. But the battle was just beginning. Maya's feet felt heavier with every step away from Riverside High. She made her way home in silence, each block putting more distance between her and the school, but not from the humiliation that clung to her like a stain. As she opened the weathered gate and crossed the tiny front yard, she could already see the familiar lamp glowing softly in the living room window, a beacon of warmth in a world that too often felt cold. Inside the house was modest, but there was a sense of order and dignity in the way everything was cared for. The scent of lavender drifted from a bowl on the table, and photographs of 3 generations lined the mantel. Maya paused just inside the door, forcing herself to breathe, to smile. Her grandmother, Josephine, rested in her favorite armchair. A faded quilt pulled up to her chest. Though illness had bent her spine and stolen some of her strength, her eyes remained sharp and knowing. She smiled when Maya entered, her voice gentle, but tinged with concern. "You're home early, child. How was your day?" Maya wiped her hands on her jeans to hide the trembling, then leaned down and kissed Josephine's forehead. "Just another day, Grandma. I brought you your tea." She set the mug beside her, careful not to show the splatter of sauce on her shirt. Josephine's cough interrupted the silence. Deep, ragged, persistent. Maya quickly moved to adjust the pillows, rubbing her back until the fit passed. "Don't fuss, darling. I'm tougher than I look," Josephine managed, patting Maya's hand. "I know things aren't always easy out there." Maya swallowed, blinking fast. For a moment, she considered spilling everything, the cafeteria, the video, the names. But Josephine's face was already drawn with worry. Instead, Maya pushed the pain down, folding it away for later. "It's nothing I can't handle," she whispered, squeezing her grandmother's fingers. "You taught me how." When Josephine drifted back into a light nap, Maya moved quietly through the house. She paused at the bookshelf where her mother's photograph stood. A beautiful woman, eyes kind and hopeful, dressed in a nurse's uniform. Maya reached out, tracing the outline of her mother's smile. Memories surged. Memories the town never spoke about. The hospital trip that should have been routine. The hours of waiting. The way the nurse at the desk barely glanced at their insurance card. The way the pain in her mother's chest was brushed aside. Maya remembered the doctor's cold words. "It's probably stress," and how the room emptied out when her mother's cries grew louder. By the time they took her seriously, it was too late. The lawsuit went nowhere. The hospital offered apologies and paperwork. The city moved on. But Maya's father, once a small-town attorney, angry and grieving, vowed that his wife's death wouldn't be swept away by indifference. He went back to law school at night, took federal exams, worked cases nobody else wanted, built a reputation as a relentless defender of the forgotten. Now he was Judge Harrison. Never home for long, but fighting every day for families like his own. Maya looked at her reflection in the photo frame. She saw the same haunted, stubborn light in her own eyes. She pressed her forehead to the glass, and for a moment, the ache of loss cut deeper than any cafeteria insult. The shrill ring of her phone startled her. Maya fumbled to answer. "Dad." Judge Harrison's voice, tired but steady, filled the room. "Hey, Princess, sorry I missed your call earlier. How's your grandma?" "She's resting. We're okay." Maya hesitated. Should she tell him? The words burned in her throat, but she heard the weariness in his voice, the stress of another day in court. "Are you working late again?" "I've got a full docket in Washington. I won't make it home this week, but I wanted to hear your voice." There was a pause, then a gentler note. "I know tomorrow's your big presentation. I wanted to wish you luck." Maya forced brightness into her reply. "I'll do my best, Dad. Mom would have wanted that." "Your best is always enough," he said softly. "Listen, I sent you something. It should be there by now. A package for tomorrow. Open it tonight." Curiosity flickered through the gloom. "What is it?" "A reminder of who you are and of your mother. Wear it proudly, Maya." Walk into that school the way she walked into every room with dignity. No matter what they said. Promise me. Maya's voice broke. I promise, Dad. After they hung up, she went to the front door and found the box waiting on the mat. She brought it inside, hands trembling, and opened it at the kitchen table. Inside, carefully wrapped, was a white dress covered in soft, delicate flowers. A dress her mother had worn once, the last time Maya remembered seeing her smile. The fabric shimmered with the promise of new beginnings. Maya pressed the dress to her cheek, inhaling the faint, comforting scent that lingered from years before. In that moment, grief and pride twisted together. A knot she could not untangle. She knew what the dress meant. She knew what it cost to keep believing in dignity, in hope, in justice. When the world seemed to conspire against all three. Later that night, after Josephine had fallen into deep sleep, Maya slipped into the dress. She stood before the old hallway mirror, her hands smoothing the skirt. For the first time all week, she let herself imagine something better, something beyond Riverside's halls, beyond the stains and sneers. In her reflection, she saw not just a survivor, but the daughter of a woman who never stopped fighting and a father who refused to give up. Her tears fell silently. But when she wiped them away, only determination remained. The stains, the whispers, the cruelty. They would not define her. Not now, not ever. As the first light crept over the windowsill, Maya looked at herself in the mirror and straightened her shoulders. Tomorrow she would walk into that school not as their victim, but as her mother's legacy. Morning light cut clean lines through the windows of Riverside High. As Maya stepped inside, the hush that followed her entrance was almost palpable. Her white dress shimmered, a beacon of quiet defiance, immaculate and out of place among the sea of faded denim and tired faces. Students parted to make way, some with awe, most with something colder. There was no hiding today. She moved through the corridors with her chin high, the ghost of her mother's courage draped around her shoulders. Brandon saw her first, leaning against the lockers with his pack of followers. His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing as he watched Maya walk with a confidence that should have been impossible. He elbowed Marcus. Look who decided to play dress up. He sneered, voice carrying. Guess she thinks if she looks expensive, people will forget she came from nothing. Marcus grinned, echoing him. That dress probably cost more than her family makes in a month. Maya stopped. She could have kept walking. She always did before, but not this time. She met Brandon's gaze, unblinking, her voice clear and cold. Funny Brandon, you think money makes you better, but all I see is fear. Maybe if you worked half as hard as you run your mouth, you'd be something besides a coward. The crowd bristled. For a second, even Brandon hesitated, but pride and the need to dominate burned brighter. He blocked her path, eyes hard. Don't get smart, Maya. You don't belong here, no matter what you wear. You can't wash the dirt off. She stepped forward, nose almost touching his chest, eyes locked on his. I belong wherever I decide to stand. That terrifies you, doesn't it? He shoved her back, rougher than necessary. Maya stumbled, but didn't fall. Whispers flared all around them. She's asking for it. Knows her place now. Marcus snickered. Go back to cleaning up after us, Maya. Everyone knows that's what your kind does best. Maya glared at them. Say it all you want. It doesn't make it true. It just proves you're weak. Her voice rang out, sharp and strong. A few students watched, frozen between shock and secret satisfaction. Some lifted their phones, recording, hoping for spectacle or evidence. No one intervened. Brandon's face twisted with humiliation. You got a smart mouth for someone nobody wants. Not your daddy, not your teachers, not even this school. You think you're better than us? You'll always be a charity case. She gritted her teeth, refusing to look away. Better a charity case than a bully who hides behind a team and a teacher. Takes real guts to gang up on a girl, doesn't it? That struck a nerve. Brandon's hand shot out, yanking her roughly by the arm. You think you're brave? Let's see how brave you are when you're alone. He and Marcus dragged her down the side hall, away from the eyes of the main corridor, past classroom doors and faded trophies. Her heels scraped the linoleum as she fought to break free, but their grip was iron. They shoved her into an empty classroom, slamming the door. Marcus twisted the lock, grinning. No witnesses. No one to save you. Brandon circled her like a predator. Still think you're untouchable in that dress? He lashed out, his hand cracking across her face, splitting her lip. The sting was blinding, metallic. Blood welled on her skin, red against white. But Maya stood her ground. Is this what it takes to make you feel powerful? Two guys beating up a girl in a dress. Must be hard living with that kind of weakness. Brandon's eyes flashed. He seized her hair, yanking her head back, spit flying from his lips. Don't talk to me about weakness, you filthy. He spat in her face, a glob landing on her cheek. Marcus laughed. Told you she was all mouth. Let's see her talk now. Maya's breath came ragged. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, forcing herself not to cry. She fixed them both with a look of utter contempt. You can hit me. You can call me names, but you'll never break me. And you'll never be half the man my mother raised me to be. Brandon trembled with rage. He raised his fist again, ready to strike, when suddenly the classroom door creaked open. Mrs. Porter entered, lips curved in a slow, cold smile. She closed the door behind her and without a word locked it. The click was final, echoing. Brandon hesitated. We were just Mrs. Porter raised a hand, silencing him. I know exactly what you're doing, Brandon. She looked Maya up and down, eyes resting on the white dress now stained with blood. Some people need to be taught their place, don't they? Her smile widened, cruel and satisfied. Don't worry about the cameras. I've taken care of them. She leaned against the desk, arms folded, watching. Teach her a lesson, boys. Make sure she remembers who runs Riverside. Maya, back against the wall, chin lifted, eyes fierce, met Mrs. Porter's gaze, unbroken. They wanted her defeated, destroyed, invisible. But even as she was cornered, her resolve only hardened. Mrs. Porter's gaze swept over Maya, all pretense of civility gone. You really think you're special, don't you? She spat. That dress, that mouth. You walk in here like you're better than the rest of us. Like this school should be grateful for your presence. Brandon and Marcus hovered at her flanks, waiting for her signal, eyes hungry for permission. Maya wiped her mouth with trembling fingers, voice hoarse but unbroken. I don't need to be special to stand up to you. I only need to be human, something you forgot how to be. Mrs. Porter's nostrils flared. Human. Don't kid yourself. All you've done is take scholarships, sympathy, second chances. What do you give, Maya? What do you contribute except drama and disgrace? Brandon chimed in, eager to please. Yeah, all she does is act like she's too good for us. Little Miss Martyr, always looking for a handout. Mrs. Porter circled closer, voice dropping to a hiss. You're a stain on this school's reputation. We give you everything, and you repay us with attitude. No gratitude, no respect. You're a problem, Maya. A problem that needs fixing. Maya's fists clenched at her sides. You hate me because I remind you of everything you failed to be. You're not a teacher. You're a coward who hides behind children. The word struck like a whip. Mrs. Porter's composure fractured. Venom flickered in her eyes. Hold her. She snapped. Brandon moved swiftly, grabbing Maya's arms and pinning them behind her. Marcus gripped her shoulders, the pressure bruising. Maya thrashed, fighting with all the strength left in her. But the boys were bigger, heavier, merciless. She screamed, "My father is a federal judge. If you touch me, you'll lose everything." Mrs. Porter threw her head back, laughing. A sharp mocking sound that bounced off the empty desks. A judge? Your father's nothing. He's a name on a door, just like you're a name on a list that's getting erased today. Maya's voice was raw, desperate, but filled with conviction. You can't erase me. I'm not ashamed of who I am. You are. The room seemed to freeze. Mrs. Porter's face twisted in rage. All mask and manner dropped. You ungrateful little brat. You don't get to talk to me like that. Not in my school. She lunged, hands grabbing the delicate collar of Maya's dress. For a moment, time stretched. Maya staring defiantly into her teacher's face. Then, rip. The sound was brutal, slicing the silence. White fabric tore apart in Mrs. Porter's fists, exposing Maya's shoulder, the memory of her mother's hope destroyed in a second. The pain of humiliation, of helplessness, of being utterly exposed, tore through Maya, hotter than any slap. She sobbed, not out of fear, but pure outrage. Mrs. Porter dangled the scrap of fabric before her. Look at you now, just another liar in a pretty dress. You think this makes you pure? This is who you really are. Torn, dirty, nothing. Marcus snickered. Brandon's grip loosened just enough for Maya to wrench one arm free. She slapped his face fierce and desperate even as the tears streamed down her cheeks. You're all monsters. She choked. All of you. Brandon's face went red. He raised his fist, but Mrs. Porter stopped him with a glance. No more marks, Brandon. We wouldn't want anyone to see what she really is. Besides, she's broken now. Maya collapsed to her knees, clutching the torn dress, shoulders heaving, body racked with silent sobs. She stared up at Mrs. Porter through blurred vision, hatred and grief burning together. Mrs. Porter crouched, voice so low only Maya could hear. No matter how hard you fight, you'll never be more than what we let you be. Remember that. She straightened, waving the fabric like a victory flag. Now you look the part, Maya. Now everyone can see what you really are. Suddenly, a thunderous bang shattered the moment. The heavy door at the back of the classroom rattled in its frame, then burst open. A blinding shaft of light, spilling into the darkness. All heads snapped toward the doorway. In the silhouette stood a tall, imposing figure. Silent, immovable. The air held its breath. The door, battered and thick, didn't just swing open. It exploded inward with a deafening crash. For a split second, the entire room froze. Maya blinked through her tears, vision blurring between shame and shock as the silhouette filled the threshold. Tall, broad-shouldered, draped in the unmistakable black robes of a federal judge. The silver badge glinted on his chest, but it was the hard line of his jaw, the fire in his eyes that filled the space with more authority than any uniform. Judge Harrison didn't hesitate. He strode in, boots echoing across the tile, a storm walking on 2 feet. Behind him trailed the town sheriff, face stern, eyes flickering between guilt and awe, and 2 imposing FBI agents, the kind who seemed carved from stone. For the first time, Mrs. Porter looked truly afraid, her face drained of color, the cocky smirk wiped away. Brandon stood frozen, eyes wide, fists still clenched around Maya's torn dress. "Dad!" Maya's voice trembled, a single word, thick with relief and unshed agony. Harrison moved straight to his daughter. He didn't speak at first, simply knelt, wrapping his robe around her slumped shoulders. The gesture wasn't just protective. It was an unspoken promise that whatever horrors had just happened, she would never again face them alone. "Are you hurt?" he whispered, eyes searching her for bruises, his hand gentle, but trembling. Maya nodded, unable to speak, clutching his robe like a lifeline. Then Harrison straightened, turning to face Mrs. Porter. His eyes were granite, cold, sharp, unforgiving. "Explain yourself," he commanded, voice so deep it made the air vibrate. The sheriff and FBI agents spread out behind him, blocking every exit. Mrs. Porter backed away. All the power she had wielded in this room evaporating with every step. She tried to stammer out an excuse. "There's been a misunderstanding. She started. Judge Harrison's glare stopped her dead. "You will not speak another word unless it's to your lawyer. Sheriff, place her under arrest." The sheriff, hands no longer trembling, advanced. "Mrs. Porter, you are under arrest for assault and battery, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice." He snapped the cuffs on her wrists, the metallic click echoing through the silent room. Brandon, red-faced and sweating, tried to protest. "This isn't what it looks like." But the FBI agents already had him by both arms. "You have the right to remain silent," one intoned, reading him his rights with the same ruthless efficiency Brandon used to lord over the cafeteria. Maya huddled under her father's robe, tried to catch her breath, the humiliation of moments before still burned on her skin, but it was nothing compared to the waves of release and gratitude flooding through her now. Her father, the man who had fought for justice in distant courtrooms, was here now for her. Mrs. Porter's bravado collapsed. She stumbled as she was led away, dropping the ragged strip of white fabric she'd torn from Maya's dress. Judge Harrison watched her, eyes steel. "You will answer for every second of pain you inflicted on my daughter and every student before her." The room, once a chamber of cruelty, felt suddenly emptied of power. The ghosts of laughter, mockery, and violence were replaced by the heavy weight of justice. As the authorities processed the scene, the sheriff approached Harrison, voice low. "Your mother-in-law called me judge. She said Maya hadn't come home on time, that something felt wrong. She was right." Harrison nodded, his face drawn, but grateful. "I owe her more than I could ever repay." Maya's tears finally broke free. "Dad, I thought I could handle it. I didn't want you to worry. I didn't want Grandma to." He pulled her close. Voice rough with emotion. "You never have to face them alone, Maya. Not anymore." One of the FBI agents guided Brandon out, but as they did, something tumbled from the inside pocket of his varsity jacket. A small prescription bottle. It rolled across the tile, coming to rest at Maya's feet. She stared at it, confusion turning to dread. Judge Harrison bent to retrieve it. The label bore a familiar name, Dr. Samuel Mitchell. Maya's breath caught in her throat. The former principal, who had mysteriously died the year before. Harrison read the label, his brow furrowing. Why is a bottle of oxycodone prescribed to Dr. Mitchell in Brandon's pocket? Brandon's face went pale, lips moving, but no words coming. The sheriff turned to the judge, voice urgent. We need to secure that as evidence. That's a Schedule II controlled substance. And Mitchell, he's been dead for over a year. Maya's mind raced. Why would Brandon be carrying a dead man's medication? How deep did this rot go? Suddenly, the day's torment, the beating, the insults, the ripped dress, seemed like just the surface of something far more sinister. Harrison placed the bottle in an evidence bag, his gaze hardening with fresh resolve. This is no longer just a case of school bullying, Sheriff. This is something much bigger. The sound of police radios crackled. Flashing lights painted the hallway in streaks of blue and red. Mrs. Porter, Brandon, and Marcus, all in cuffs, were led past students and faculty who had gathered outside the door, their faces pale with shock and shame. Inside the classroom, Maya and her father sat together, alone at last. She wept hard, cleansing tears, while Harrison held her, his hand on her head, the protective weight of his robe sheltering her from the world's ugliness. I'm sorry, Maya. I'm so sorry. She shook her head. You're here. That's all I ever needed. They sat in silence, grief and anger binding them. The ruined dress lay on the floor, a symbol of everything taken. But the embrace, the silent strength, promised everything that remained. As the hallway cleared, Maya looked at her father with wide, searching eyes. How did you know to come? He managed a small sad smile. A good judge trusts his instincts and his mother-in-law. When justice calls, you don't wait, you run. Outside, the sirens wailed, carrying away the villains who once ruled Riverside. Inside, father and daughter clung to each other, not as judge and victim, but as family, scarred, but unbroken. And as Judge Harrison's eyes fell once more on the bottle with the dead man's name, he understood. The true darkness in Riverside High had only just begun to reveal itself. Night fell over Riverside, but the fluorescent lights inside the police station refused to soften. In the windowless interrogation room, Brandon sat slumped in a plastic chair, his hands cuffed and his eyes darting between the officers and the stained table. The bravado he carried through school hallways had crumbled into fear and confusion. Mrs. Porter sat further down the corridor in another room, her face hollow, her confidence stripped away by the harsh overhead lights, and the weight of the charges read to her. Every so often, her eyes flicked to the mirrored glass as if searching for a loophole, a friendly face, a miracle. In the lobby, Maya waited with her father. The remnants of her ruined dress folded tightly in her lap. She watched the evidence bag containing the prescription bottle. Dr. Mitchell's name stark against the label, resting on the counter like a silent accusation. Every glance at it made her heart twist. The puzzle pieces of her memories shifting, falling into new and disturbing patterns. The doors burst open with a wave of entitled energy. In strode, Mayor Thompson, Brandon's father. He radiated wealth and arrogance, his tailored suit as sharp as his voice. Without so much as a glance at Maya or her father, he marched straight to the front desk, demanding attention. My son is being held in there like a common criminal, he barked, slamming his hand on the desk. Release him now. The duty officer barely flinched. Sir, your son is under arrest pending investigation for assault and for possession of a controlled substance prescribed to a deceased individual. You can't see him until nonsense. Thompson snapped. It's a mistake. A prank that got out of hand. And that bottle? Brandon said he found it. He was bringing it to the nurse. Kids do dumb things. We're not ruining lives over a misunderstanding. Judge Harrison stood, stepping forward. His presence was quieter, but commanded more respect than any threat. With respect, Mayor, this isn't a misunderstanding. It's a felony. Possession of a Schedule II substance prescribed to a dead man. That's a federal crime, and neither you nor I can simply wave it away. Thompson sneered. Spare me the lecture, Harrison. I know who you are. You may run your courtroom, but you don't run this town. I built Riverside's reputation, its football field, half the homes you see around here. I won't let you or anyone else destroy my son's future over some girl's temper tantrum. A hush fell. Maya's hands shook, but she kept her eyes down, biting her tongue against 100 things she wanted to say. Beside her, Judge Harrison's jaw tensed, but his tone never wavered. I'm not interested in politics, Mr. Mayor. I'm interested in the law, and the law is clear. Sheriff Matthews, who'd been observing from the doorway, stepped in. The federal agents are handling the narcotics charge. Neither you nor I can override that, sir. And until further notice, both suspects are being held for questioning. Thompson's nostrils flared. You'll all regret this. No judge, no sheriff, no bureaucrat will touch my family. His eyes swept the room, lingering on Maya with open contempt. Mark my words. Harrison didn't blink. You do well to remember, Mr. Mayor. Power doesn't grant immunity. It comes with responsibility. The mayor stormed off, cell phone pressed to his ear, already plotting. The sound of his voice echoed down the hallway. Ugly and desperate. Inside the evidence room, a forensics tech approached Harrison and the sheriff. Preliminary prints are back on the bottle, she announced quietly. It's not just Brandon or Mrs. Porter. We found another set. Partial, but they match a third person on staff at Riverside. Harrison's brow furrowed. Who? The tech hesitated. It's the school nurse, head of the volunteer program. Maya, who had overheard, felt a chill slide down her spine. She remembered the nurse always smiling, always hovering, signing off on every community service hour Brandon and his friends racked up. She remembered how Dr. Mitchell had once praised the nurse's dedication, how he'd always insisted students respect every staff member, no matter their job. Suddenly, the story about Dr. Mitchell's sudden stroke the year before sounded less like a tragedy and more like a warning. Maya's mind flashed back to those days. The confusion, the whispers, the feeling that something had been swept under the rug. In the main office, the mayor paced, phone glued to his ear, barking orders. Call the district attorney. I want every charge dropped. I want those files sealed. But for the first time, panic had crept into his voice. Judge Harrison returned to Maya's side, his face a mix of grim satisfaction and concern. You all right? She nodded, eyes on the evidence bag. Dad. Dr. Mitchell was the only person who really protected us at school. Why would his medicine be with Brandon? Why would Harrison knelt to meet her gaze? Sometimes, Maya, when you start to pull at a thread, the whole fabric unravels. That's what's happening here. The truth is coming out piece by piece. Sheriff Matthews leaned in, his tone low. We'll need a warrant for the nurse's office first thing tomorrow. If this is part of a larger scheme, Harrison finished for him. Then everyone involved will answer for it. No matter their last name, no matter their job title. Down the hall, the clatter of keys and the sound of Mrs. Porter's sobbing echoed. For the first time, the walls of Riverside's corruption seemed to crack. Maya stared at her lap, heart pounding. She remembered Dr. Mitchell's funeral, how almost no students were allowed to attend, how teachers whispered about moving on. She remembered the nurse hugging her afterward, whispering that everything would be all right. Now she felt sick at the memory. As the officers prepped for the next day's search, Harrison squeezed Maya's hand. "This isn't over. If we're lucky, the school's secrets might finally see daylight." Maya looked up, her voice small but steady. "Dr. Mitchell died protecting us. I won't let that be forgotten." The clock on the station wall ticked past midnight. The evidence was sealed. The rooms emptied, but the battle for justice was only beginning. And as Maya watched the mayor disappear into the night, she knew the next thread to pull would lead straight to Riverside High's own heart of darkness. The next morning, Riverside High's hallways pulsed with a new tension. Whispers rippled from locker to locker. Police at the school, Brandon's in jail, Mrs. Porter's gone, but most students barely paused. At Riverside, scandals came and went. What mattered was who survived. In the administration office, a police officer unlocked Brandon's personal locker. Behind piles of textbooks and workout clothes, they found a thick dog-eared notebook. Inside, neatly penciled columns marked volunteer visits, Meadowbrook Estates and medication checklists, the names of elderly residents lined up in one row, the initials of student helpers in another, with Brandon's name most frequent. In the margins were cryptic notes. Meds restocked. Special request. Miss Anderson dropped by after football. Judge Harrison scanned the pages, his heart sinking. This isn't a volunteer log. It's an operation. At the same time, in the windowless school nurse's office, Nurse Kingsley bustled between cupboards. To a casual eye, she seemed perfectly composed, mid-50s, plump, with warm eyes and soft hands. She offered a smile to the officers who arrived with their warrant. "Just routine checks?" she asked, her tone syrupy. "I'm always happy to cooperate. Our students' health is my top priority." But as the officers searched, unease flickered behind her eyes. In the back of a locked cabinet, beneath bandages and cough syrup, they found vials of painkillers, some expired, some still labeled with the names of deceased patients from Meadowbrook Estates. A small notebook hidden behind a tray. Detailed visits, drug dosages, and codes only someone inside the medical world would understand. When confronted, Kingsley's smile never faltered. "You know how it is with prescriptions these days. Elderly folks misplace their meds. Family members forget to bring bottles. I just try to help keep things organized. No harm meant." But the evidence spoke louder than words. Sheriff Matthews leafed through the logs. Face grim. "You've been authorizing these student visits." "Of course. Community service is part of the scholarship application. I simply make sure they fill out their forms correctly." Kingsley replied, tone oily. "Some of these kids, if they don't volunteer, they'll never get a chance at college. You wouldn't want to deny them that, would you?" The officers shared a look. "And you supervise these visits personally?" one asked. She hesitated. "Well, there are a lot of students, a lot of homes to visit. I can't be everywhere at once. That's why I rely on the honor system. I trust our Riverside families." But trust, they knew, had been the perfect cover. As more cabinets were opened, a stash of pill bottles tumbled out, each with a different elderly patient's name, but all with opioids marked as dispensed. Some of the labels had been half torn off. One was marked with the same code as the bottle found in Brandon's pocket. Meanwhile, at Meadowbrook Estates, officers interviewed staff and residents. A few residents mentioned how those football boys always arrived in pairs, smiling as they sorted through pill boxes. One frail woman, Mrs. Brennan, clutched her walker as she whispered. "They said the doctor changed my medicine, but after they left, my pain came back and my good pills, they were gone." A nurse at the home lowered her voice. "They always came in on scholarship business, signed the log books, made it all seem official. I tried to report it once, but Nurse Kingsley told me not to worry. She said Judge Harrison had signed off on everything." When the news reached Maya, her heart dropped. She sat with her father, staring at the stack of evidence, the list of names, so many elderly, so many families, all betrayed by a system meant to protect. Judge Harrison's voice was low, nearly trembling. "It was never just bullying. This is organized theft. Kingsley Porter. And those boys used the pretense of helping the elderly to steal their pain medication, sold it, covered it up, and blamed every missing pill on forgetfulness or old age, and made sure the students stayed quiet with college on the line if they talked." Sheriff Matthews entered, face pale. "We pulled security footage from the school and Meadowbrook Estates. Kingsley oversaw every visit log, and every time a patient's meds disappeared, it was her signature on the forms." Maya gripped her father's hand. "But how could nobody notice?" Harrison's answer was bitter because they preyed on the most vulnerable, old people, easy to ignore, quick to blame for mistakes. They picked students who wanted to get ahead and turned them into accomplices. And anyone who asked questions like Dr. Mitchell ended up dead. The room seemed colder. Maya shivered as she read the last page in Brandon's notebook. Next week's visits. Josephine Grace. Friday afternoon. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Dad, Grandma's on the list. They're supposed to visit her next. The words hung in the air, heavy as a storm. Sheriff Matthews turned to Judge Harrison. Voice barely above a whisper. "We're not just dealing with schoolyard cruelty. This is a drug ring hiding behind education and charity." Harrison's eyes were cold steel. "Then we end it today." Maya nodded, tears stinging her eyes, but behind them was a resolve sharper than ever before. No one would hurt her family. Not again. Friday afternoon arrived with the kind of suffocating quiet that made Maya's nerves vibrate. She hadn't told her grandmother the details, just that some school volunteers were coming and that she'd stay home to help. Josephine simply nodded, trusting her granddaughter's judgment as always. Maya spent the morning watching from the kitchen window, heart pounding with every unfamiliar car that slowed near their curb. She kept her phone charged and within reach, its voice recorder open, ready. Her father had called the sheriff for extra patrols, but Maya insisted on staying by her grandmother's side until it was over. If these students tried anything, they'd find her waiting. At 2 p.m. sharp, the knock sounded too polite, too practiced. 2 students stood on the porch. A tall, thin boy with the build of a track star and a girl whose blonde ponytail flicked nervously behind her. Their Riverside sweatshirts looked crisp, their smiles hollow. "Hi, Mrs. Grace. We're here for the volunteer medicine check, part of the school's new outreach program." The girl chirped, her tone a careful imitation of Nurse Kingsley. Maya almost laughed at the false cheer. She opened the door, blocking their view of the living room. "You're early. Grandma's just resting. I'll be supervising." The boy's smile faltered. Sure. It's just a quick check. We have to log every visit or coach will get mad." Inside, Maya introduced them to Josephine, who watched quietly, her hands folded over her blanket. "Go on, dear. I trust you," she whispered to Maya. They began their routine. The girl asked for Josephine's pill organizer. Her fingers trembled as she flipped open the compartments, glancing often at her friend, who busied himself recording on his phone, just enough to look official if questioned. Maya's heart raced. She saw the girl palm a bottle from her pocket, a match for the heart medication Josephine relied on. In its place, the girl tried to slip in a nearly identical container. The pills inside slightly shinier, faintly sweeter. Maya didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, snatching both bottles from the girl's hands. "What's this?" Her voice rang out, sharper than she'd intended. The boy's eyes went wide. "Hey, don't get upset. We're just following the nurse's instructions," but Maya wasn't listening. She popped the lid from the fake bottle and let a few tablets fall into her palm. She sniffed them, tasted the tip of one with her tongue. Sugar. They weren't pills at all. Josephine looked up, alarmed. "What's happening?" Maya kept her gaze on the two students. "You were about to switch my grandma's real medication for sugar pills." "Why?" The girl's bravado collapsed. She shook, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to. I swear. They said if we didn't do what Nurse Kingsley told us, we'd lose our place on the college list. I can't get in trouble. My parents," she broke down, sobbing. "It's not just her. The principal knows. They all do. The scholarship money. It's all from this. They make us do it." The boy dropped his phone, hands raised as if surrendering. "We're all scared. You can't tell anyone. If the school finds out, they'll ruin us." Maya's anger was a living thing. "You already ruined yourselves. But you're not taking my family with you." She tapped her phone, making sure the entire exchange had been recorded. "You're going to tell me everything. Names, dates, what you've seen, or I'll take this to the police right now." The girl nodded, sniffling. "Principal Lawson. He took over after Dr. Mitchell died. He's the one who picks the students for the scholarships. It's all about the money. The pills go out the back door. Someone comes to collect them every Friday. If anyone asks, we're supposed to say the residents lost their meds or mixed up their bottles. They say it's for the good of the school." Maya's hand shook, but she kept her voice steady. "That's not for the good of anyone. Dr. Mitchell died because he tried to stop it, didn't he?" The boy looked down. "Guilty. He threatened to call the police. Next week, he was gone. Stroke, they said, but we all knew it was a lie." Josephine listened in horror, her frail hands gripping Maya's for support. How could people do such things? Maya didn't have an answer. She turned to the students. "You can leave now. I'll be taking this to the authorities. If you try to warn anyone, I'll make sure they know you confessed." They fled, stumbling over each other to get out, their fear as real as her fury. The house fell quiet again, but the old walls felt changed. No longer a sanctuary, but a battleground. Maya hugged her grandmother, promising, "It's over now. They won't touch you again." She believed it, or tried to. Gathering her phone, the real medication, and a secret recording, Maya walked out the front door into the late afternoon sun. Every step was heavy, but her resolve was steel. The real enemy wasn't just Mrs. Porter or Brandon. It was a network of adults, teachers, and leaders. The very people entrusted to protect. The rot ran all the way to the top. She headed straight for her father. The recording tight in her fist, ready to drag the darkness into the light. Judge Harrison sat in his office, the late sunlight filtering through heavy drapes. On the desk before him, Maya's phone glowed, replaying the trembling confession she'd captured, the names, the scheme, the fear in those students' voices. Every word tightened the knot in his stomach. But as the final piece fell into place, his gaze hardened. This was no longer a school scandal. It was a conspiracy stretching from the classroom to the cemetery. He reached for the phone, dialing the district attorney. "We have enough to seek a court order. I need the body of Dr. Samuel Mitchell exhumed. Yes, immediately. I have probable cause to suspect foul play and a trail of prescription fraud connected directly to his death." The next morning, news swept through Riverside like wildfire. Camera crews clustered outside the courthouse. Microphones shoved in the faces of townsfolk and teachers alike. Mayor Thompson, with his practiced scowl and slicked back hair, stood before the flashing bulbs. "This is an outrage," he thundered, digging up a respected principal, disturbing his family's peace, all for the vendetta of a single judge and his troublemaking daughter. "This is not justice, it's revenge." On social media, the story fractured the town. Some demanded answers. Others blamed Maya for dragging everyone through the mud. At school, the isolation grew worse. The children of the implicated families, now anxious, some defiant, others simply scared, avoided Maya in the hallways, where once there were whispered jeers. Now there was a hard, frightened silence. Teachers gave her wide berth, fearful of what she might record or reveal. But Maya kept her chin high. She was bruised, exhausted, but she walked into each class with the quiet defiance of someone who had nothing left to lose but her dignity. She ignored the stares, the muttered snitch, the sense of eyes boring into her back. Each day she remembered her mother's promise, stand for what's right, even when standing hurts. In the cemetery on the edge of town, the exhumation began under the watch of police, forensic experts, and grim-faced city officials. Maya stood with her father on the grass, the wind cool against her skin. Harrison's hand was firm on her shoulder, steadying them both. The casket was lifted, opened, the remains handled with clinical precision. Medical examiners in crisp gloves removed tissue samples. Pill vials found in the lining of Mitchell's suit, the faint scent of formaldehyde mingling with the earthy air. In the courthouse later that day, the examination findings were presented. The district attorney spoke quietly but clearly. Toxicology results confirmed Dr. Samuel Mitchell did not die of a natural stroke. His system contained a massive overdose of a potent sedative, benzodiazepines, specifically the same lot number and batch as pills recently found in the Riverside High nurse's office. There is no medical record that Dr. Mitchell was ever prescribed these drugs. A hush swept the courtroom. Even the mayor fell silent, face blanching. Judge Harrison leaned forward. "Let the record show this is no longer just fraud, but murder. Committed to silence a whistleblower and protect a criminal enterprise run from inside the school." Cameras flashed. Reporters jostled. Outside, the narrative shifted. No longer a question of whether Maya's family was stirring up trouble, but who in Riverside had blood on their hands. That evening, the news reached the students. Maya's phone buzzed with dozens of anonymous texts. "We're sorry. We didn't know. Stay strong." Others were uglier. "You should have kept quiet. You brought this on all of us." Maya held the phone tight, blinking back tears. She thought of Dr. Mitchell, the only adult who had looked out for her and how he'd paid for his courage. She thought of the other victims, the old, the poor, the forgotten, and felt her loneliness replaced by a burning purpose. At home, Harrison gathered Maya and Josephine at the dinner table, his voice heavy with both grief and resolve. The storm isn't over, but for the first time, the truth has come into the open. Dr. Mitchell died for standing up to evil. We owe it to him and to everyone they tried to silence, to see this through. Outside, a cold wind rattled the windows. But for Maya, a new fire blazed in her chest. She would not run from the darkness. She would drag it into the light, whatever it cost. And somewhere in Riverside, those responsible for Dr. Mitchell's death felt that fire growing closer. The youth detention center was colder than Maya expected, its sterile walls and the persistent hum of fluorescent lights made everything feel harsher, like hope itself had been stripped out and locked away. In a small visitation booth divided by thick glass, she sat beside her father, Judge Harrison, waiting for Brandon to be brought in. She clutched her notebook, her fingers restless. Her heart steeled for whatever came next. Brandon entered, not with swagger, but as a shadow of the boy who once ruled the hallways. His eyes were bloodshot, shoulders slumped. The famous Letterman jacket, replaced by a state-issued jumpsuit. For a moment, he couldn't meet Maya's gaze. He took the seat opposite, wringing his hands. Judge Harrison started, his tone cool and measured. Brandon, you know why you're here. This isn't about football. This isn't even about grades. This is about a man's life and the choices you made. Brandon's jaw trembled. I never wanted any of this to happen. I thought it was just about keeping the team together, making sure we won, making my dad proud. Maya leaned in, voice soft but razor sharp. You tormented me because I was different. You called me names because it made you feel powerful. But this, she tapped the glass, her eyes burning. This isn't power. It's fear. And now someone is dead. Are you still protecting them? Brandon, Mrs. Porter, your father. He winced at her words. A single tear breaking loose. You don't understand. My dad, he's not like yours. If I disappoint him, I'm nothing. All he cares about is how things look, how I make him look. Harrison's gaze was steady. And what about Dr. Mitchell? What about all the people your father hurt to keep his name clean? Brandon shook his head, voice breaking. I didn't know. I mean, I heard things. The night Dr. Mitchell died. My dad was at school late. He said it was business. I saw his car out back, parked by the gym. Mrs. Porter was there, too. She told me to keep my mouth shut, that it was adult problems. Maya pressed, relentless. Did you see them go into his office? Did you hear anything? Brandon's hands trembled on the tabletop. I saw my dad carrying a briefcase. Mrs. Porter was crying when she came out. After that, nobody talked about Dr. Mitchell except to say he was gone. My dad. He made sure nobody asked questions. He told me, if you want to play next season, you forget you ever saw anything. A heavy silence filled the room. Maya's anger warred with a strange sad empathy. You let him scare you into silence. And you hurt me to prove you weren't weak. Brandon broke down. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. But I'm not a killer. I never wanted anyone to die. Judge Harrison's voice was gentler, but no less stern. It's time to stop protecting him. Brandon, the truth will come out with or without you. If you know something, you can help fix this. You can do the right thing now. Brandon looked up readied. My dad's the one behind the foundation for tomorrow. He set up the fund, but the money it's not from donors. It's from the drug sales, from the stuff we stole. He used it to pay off everyone, teachers, the board, even some cops. Mrs. Porter was just following orders. He told me if I talked, I'd ruin the family, ruin the school, ruin everything. Maya's voice was firm, unwavering. Sometimes you have to ruin what's rotten to build something new. Brandon nodded, tears streaming down his cheeks. He's trying to get me out. You know, even now, he said, if I keep quiet, he'll make it all go away. But I can't. I can't do it anymore. Judge Harrison slid a form across the desk, then put it in writing. Brandon, you have a chance to start over. Help us take down the real criminals. For Dr. Mitchell, for all the people who can't fight back. Brandon stared at the form, his hands shaking. Slowly, he picked up the pen. As Maya and her father stood to leave, Brandon caught her eye one last time. I never hated you, Maya. I was just afraid. I'm sorry. She offered a small sad smile. Be braver than your father, Brandon. That's how you break the cycle. They left him there alone with the weight of his choices. Outside, the wind whipped across the lot, but Maya felt lighter, a sense of inevitability in the air. The true villain had finally been unmasked. The battle wasn't over, but now they knew exactly where to strike. Night had swallowed Riverside High, casting the old brick walls into shadow. Only the thin beams of police flashlights and the nervous hum of engines broke the stillness. Maya stood beside her father and the sheriff in the empty parking lot. The air sharp with anticipation and the threat of storm. Brandon's written confession was clutched in Judge Harrison's hand, but it was the last thing Brandon said before they left the detention center that still echoed in Maya's ears. The ledger. Mrs. Porter kept it in a safe behind the chalkboard in her old classroom. The combination is her daughter's birthday. It's all in their payments, names, every deal. Harrison turned to the sheriff. If we find that ledger, we end this. The team moved through the halls with a silent, determined energy. The school felt haunted, a labyrinth of secrets. Each step drawing them closer to the heart of corruption. They reached the history classroom. The old chalkboard looming in the faint light. Maya's hands shook as her father entered the code. With a groan, the hidden safe clicked open. Inside, a heavy leather-bound ledger rested atop stacks of cash and envelopes. The first page glistened with names, students, faculty, community leaders, payment amounts, coded messages. Harrison's face went pale as he flipped through the damning entries. It was everything they needed to bring the mayor, the principal, and the rest of the ring down. Suddenly, the sharp scent of smoke cut through the moment. Maya's eyes widened. Dad, do you smell that? An alarm began to wail. Shrill and urgent. Down the hall, orange light flickered against the walls. Fire! The sheriff shouted, and chaos erupted. Flames raced along the linoleum, devouring posters and trophies, hungrily climbing the walls. Maya and Harrison rushed for the door. The precious ledger clutched to Harrison's chest, but through the thickening smoke, Maya glimpsed a figure staggering from the direction of the teacher's lounge. A frail silhouette, coughing, clutching a bag. Maya froze. Someone's in there. Ignoring her father's protests, she broke away, running toward the woman. Heat seared her arms and cheeks. Smoke clawed at her throat. She reached the woman, an elderly lady in a house coat. Face streaked with soot, tears glistening in her eyes. Help me, the woman rasped. Maya grabbed her arm, half carrying, half dragging her toward the exit. The walls groaned, glass shattered. The fire roared like a beast unleashed. Harrison and the sheriff met them at the door, hauling them into the open air just as flames burst through the windows. Paramedics rushed in, dousing the woman's burns with water and oxygen. Maya coughed, her eyes streaming. Harrison knelt by her side. "Are you hurt?" Maya shook her head, shivering, still clutching the rescued bag. She looked at the woman whose face was now clear in the ambulance light. Recognition flickered in her mind. She'd seen her before at parent-teacher conferences at graduation ceremonies. This was Mrs. Porter's mother. The sheriff's voice was low, incredulous. "Ma'am, why were you in the school?" The woman's lips trembled. "My daughter, she said it was the only way to protect our family. She begged me. She said, if I didn't, everything she built would be destroyed. I just wanted to save her. I never wanted to hurt anyone." Maya's heart twisted. Here was another victim used. Frightened, manipulated. She pressed the woman's trembling hand. "You did the right thing coming out. You don't have to protect her crimes anymore." Harrison opened the bag she'd carried out. Inside, charred at the edges, but mostly intact, was a backup drive. Another piece of evidence. Mrs. Porter must have prepared. Desperate for leverage or insurance. Harrison handed it to the sheriff, his voice steady. "We have it. Between this and the ledger, they won't escape." In the distance, the crowd that had gathered behind the police tape watched in stunned silence. Smoke billowed into the night sky. The flames illuminating every terrified, angry, and relieved face. Camera crews recorded Maya's daring rescue. The story spreading before the night was over. But even as the last flames were beaten back, Maya knew the fire had done more than destroy a room. It had exposed the lengths to which people would go for power, for family, for the desperate hope of safety. As the paramedics wheeled Mrs. Porter's mother into the ambulance, Maya's father hugged her tightly. "You risked your life for a stranger." Maya shook her head, her voice hoarse, but unyielding for justice. For everyone they tried to silence. Police officers fanned out through the smoke, gathering what evidence remained. The fire had destroyed much, but not the truth. And as dawn approached, it was Maya's courage, not the arsonist's fear that burned brightest in the memory of everyone who watched. And high above, a security camera blinked red, recording every heroic, terrible second, ready to broadcast to a world hungry for hope. Smoke clung to Maya's skin as she waited in the hospital corridor. A thin gauze bandage wrapped around her arm where the heat had seared her. She watched through the glass as the paramedics tended to Mrs. Porter's mother. The old woman's face was pale, eyes red-rimmed with guilt and exhaustion, even as nurses comforted her. She clutched the battered canvas bag to her chest, refusing to let it go. Judge Harrison arrived with the sheriff. His suit flecked with soot. His eyes both proud and anxious as he looked at his daughter. He squeezed Maya's hand. "You saved a life tonight, and you might have just saved this entire town." Maya managed a tired smile, her thoughts racing as she replayed the night's chaos. Her relief was tempered by dread. If Mrs. Porter's mother was only one thread in this web, how many more innocents had been used or destroyed for someone else's power? The answer waited in the canvas bag. When Mrs. Porter's mother saw Maya and Judge Harrison approach, her voice wavered heavy with regret. "She made me do it," she whispered, "my own daughter. She said, if I burned the room, the truth would never catch her. But I saw you in that fire, risking everything for a stranger. I couldn't let you walk away empty-handed." She handed Harrison the bag. Inside, they found what the flames had missed. A blackened external hard drive, half melted at one corner, but still whole. The label read "Confidential." The hospital techs moved quickly, cleaning off the soot and plugging it into a secure laptop. Maya watched as the folder structure appeared. Hundreds of files, meticulously catalogued spreadsheets, emails, scans of ledgers, and an archive marked video evidence. The first spreadsheet stunned even the sheriff. Names dozens, then hundreds listed alongside prescription numbers, quantities, dates, and signatures. Each row was a story. An elderly woman at Meadowbrook Estates whose morphine was swapped for sugar pills. A widower whose pain management vanished the week after his son graduated. Next to each entry, digital transfers and cash deposits were tracked, hundreds of thousands of dollars, cycling from school charity accounts to personal accounts held by the principal, the nurse, and at the top, Mayor Thompson. Judge Harrison's jaw tightened. This isn't just theft, it's predatory. They chose victims who couldn't fight back and made their pain profitable. Maya felt a wave of rage, but also vindication. Every person they hurt, every family they ruined, it's all here. But the final blow came with a video file timestamped the night Dr. Mitchell died. They watched in stunned silence as the screen flickered to life. In the grainy footage, Mayor Thompson stood in the shadows of the school office, a small bottle in hand. Mrs. Porter stood beside him, her face strained. "You want this to go away," Thompson said in the video. "Then you'll use this. You're a smart woman. Accidents happen. Principals retire or don't wake up. If you want your cut, if you want your daughter to stay safe, you'll take care of it. We can't have heroes here." Mrs. Porter, hands shaking, accepted the bottle. The two shook hands. The video cut out. The sheriff stared speechless. Harrison closed the laptop. "This is it. The evidence that ties the mayor, Mrs. Porter, and the whole school board to murder, fraud, and conspiracy." Outside the hospital, the fire department finished its sweep of the ruined school. Among the blackened beams and melted trophies, the only things that survived were the digital records now sitting in Harrison's hand. Maya felt the weight of history shifting her own pain. Her mother's memory. Dar. Mitchell's sacrifice. All of it finally had meaning. She turned to Mrs. Porter's mother, who wept quietly in the next room. "You did the right thing," Maya said gently. "It's not too late for justice." Mrs. Porter's mother looked at her, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I lost my daughter to this darkness. Don't let them take anyone else." Judge Harrison called the district attorney. Then the state police news crews swarmed the hospital parking lot. Word spread quickly. There was evidence. There was video. And the town's most powerful names were about to fall. As dawn broke over Riverside, Maya stood at the window. The sky blushing pink. She thought of the fire and the courage it took to face it. For the first time, she believed, truly believed, the truth would win. But even with the evidence in hand, the hardest battle was still to come, facing a community desperate to protect its illusions. The town hall had never held a crowd like this. From before sunrise, the line wrapped around the block. Elderly men and women with walkers, young families clutching hands, veterans with medals pinned to faded jackets, and a sea of anxious faces who had all come to witness what some whispered would be the end of an era in Riverside. The news had spread overnight. The mayor was calling an emergency meeting. A fire had gutted Riverside High, and the whispers blamed Maya and her family for everything. Inside, the heat of bodies and the buzz of nervous anticipation thickened the air. Camera crews swarmed the edges, jostling for the best shot. A heavy police presence lingered near the doors, but it was clear that nothing could contain the volatile energy waiting to be unleashed. On the stage, Mayor Thompson stood beneath the town seal, his usual poise sharpened by desperation. His suit was immaculate, but sweat shone at his hairline. At his side, the principal, a cluster of board members, and a handful of teachers, some stony-faced, some avoiding eye contact. Judge Harrison and Maya waited in the front row, both silent, their faces unreadable. When the mayor finally stepped to the microphone, his voice boomed with practiced authority. "Ladies and gentlemen of Riverside, friends, neighbors, I stand before you not just as your mayor, but as a father, a citizen, a man wounded by what has transpired in our community." He paused, surveying the room, letting the tension stretch. "Last night, our beloved high school was nearly destroyed by fire. We have suffered a grievous loss. But worse than the flames themselves are the lies, the chaos, the rumors being spread by those who would see this town torn apart." The crowd murmured, a wave of confusion and anger. "Some would have you believe that corruption lives in these walls, that your leaders, your teachers have betrayed you, that my son, my family, have conspired to hurt the most vulnerable among us. I tell you these are the fevered dreams of malcontents, and who is at the center of it all?" He gestured grandly toward Maya, a young woman with a personal grudge, aided by her father. "Judge Harrison, who has used his office not for justice but for vengeance." Shouts erupted, a few in support, many simply afraid. "Tell us the truth," someone cried. "Is it true about the pills?" Another shouted. Thompson raised his hands. "A performance of sorrow. Last night's fire was no accident. It was arson, deliberate sabotage to destroy evidence and to blame this town's honest citizens. Judge Harrison and his daughter must answer for their reckless crusade." The words hung in the air like poison. Maya felt the eyes of the crowd bore into her. Some faces were full of doubt, others outright hatred. Judge Harrison stood for a moment. He only looked at the mayor. Then without drama, he mounted the steps to the podium. The sheriff followed him, flanked by deputies. "Enough," Harrison said. His voice measured, carrying. "I am not here to argue nor to accuse. I am here for the truth, and I have something you all need to see." He nodded to the technician. The lights dimmed on the massive screen behind the mayor. A video file played the security camera footage, time-stamped, unmistakably real. The room watched as Mayor Thompson on screen lounged in the school office, grinning. "They're all leeches. Every last one," he sneered, swirling a glass in hand. "Every old fool in this town. If a few of them die off, maybe the rest of us can finally breathe. Less money wasted on Social Security. Less trouble. Besides, nobody cares about the dying." A collective gasp rippled through the hall. On screen, he continued, handing a small bottle to Mrs. Porter. "You want your share. You know what to do. And keep that daughter of yours out of my office, unless you want her to disappear, too." The video froze on the mayor's smirk. The silence that followed was total seconds, stretching as if the whole room had stopped breathing. Then, chaos. Elderly men and women rose to their feet, fists shaking, voices trembling. "Shame! You monster! How dare you!" The volume built and built until the mayor's protestations were drowned out. A frail woman near the front wept, her son clutching her shoulder. "He said we didn't matter, that we were a burden." Another, a retired nurse, shook her head in disbelief. "All those pills, they were for us. They stole from us." The mayor tried to regain control. That video is fake. It's been doctored. But no one listened. The town's trust built over decades collapsed in an instant. The crowd surged forward, a torrent of outrage as news crews scrambled to capture every second. It was then that Sheriff Matthews stepped forward, his hands steady, his voice clear and full of the authority he had always lacked in the mayor's shadow. He strode to the podium, plucked the microphone from the mayor's hand, and turned to the cameras. "Mayor Thompson," he said, voice unwavering. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, murder, and the exploitation of the elderly. You have the right to remain silent. You will answer for your crimes, not just to the law, but to every person you have harmed." A roar of approval swept through the hall. Deputies moved in, handcuffing the mayor as he protested, his words lost beneath the swell of shouts and applause. Maya watched, stunned, as the balance of power shifted right before her eyes. All around, townspeople wept and cheered, strangers embracing, years of fear and anger breaking loose at last. Judge Harrison squeezed her hand, tears bright in his eyes. The principal tried to slip from the stage, but was blocked by deputies. Teachers and board members whispered frantically, some trying to edge away, others frozen with guilt. Cameras rolled, broadcasting every second live across the state. Riverside, once a town ruled by secrets and silence, now had its reckoning on the public record. Maya's chest ached with relief and fear. Relief that the truth was finally out. Fear for what would come next. As the dust of outrage settled and the work of rebuilding began, but in that moment she stood taller than ever, her scars a badge of honor, surrounded not by enemies, but by a community learning to see. And as Sheriff Matthews led the mayor away, the world watched and remembered one voice, when armed with truth, could shatter an empire. The federal courthouse was an island of order in a city still reeling from chaos. The steps outside were flanked by news vans and police barricades. The doors guarded by marshals. Inside, the air was electric with anticipation. The fall of Riverside's untouchables was finally on public trial. Maya sat beside her father near the front of the gallery. Her heart pounding as lawyers and journalists filled every seat. Judge Harrison had recused himself from the bench to avoid even the shadow of bias. But his presence in the room was its own declaration. This was about justice, not revenge. On the defense bench, Mayor Thompson sat hollow-eyed, jaws set in grim defiance. Mrs. Porter avoided the eyes of the crowd, staring down at her cuffed wrists. Principal Lawson looked pale, his suit 2 sizes too large for a man whose power had evaporated overnight. The prosecutor rose, laying out the mountain of evidence, the burnt ledger, the backup drive, the video of Thompson's chilling indifference, and the confessions of those who had been used and discarded. But the defense lawyer, a polished figure from the Capitol, fought back with every tool. He hammered away at Maya on the stand, his voice laced with feigned sympathy. "Miss Grace, you've become quite the local celebrity. You claim to be a victim, but isn't it true that you recorded your classmates without their knowledge, that you provoked certain teachers, that you have a personal vendetta against this school?" Maya sat up straighter. "I did what I had to because no one believed me. Because adults who should have protected us chose to protect themselves." He smirked, pressing harder. "Isn't it true that the evidence you provided was gathered under questionable circumstances? How can this court be sure it wasn't fabricated, exaggerated, or edited to support your claims?" Maya's voice did not tremble. "I risked everything to tell the truth. If you want to blame someone for what happened at Riverside, blame the people who lied, not the ones who finally spoke up." The judge nodded, and the defense attorney shrugged, as if Maya's courage were a trivial thing. It was then that the prosecutor asked to call one final witness. The door at the rear of the courtroom opened, and all eyes turned. Brandon entered, no longer the golden boy of Riverside, but a changed figure, sober, humbled, carrying a deep responsibility. But he wasn't alone. Pushing a wheelchair with trembling hands, was an elderly black woman, her hair a silver crown, her eyes clear and sorrowful. The hush in the room deepened as Brandon wheeled his grandmother to the front. Even the mayor seemed momentarily disoriented, his mask slipping as he recognized the woman he had forbidden his son to mention in public. The judge asked, "Mr. Thompson, do you understand why you are here today?" Brandon stood, voice unsteady, but growing firmer with every word. "Yes, Your Honor." The prosecutor stepped forward. "Brandon, do you have something to say to the court?" Brandon looked down, ashamed, then up at his grandmother. "I grew up believing I had to be the strongest, the toughest, the meanest, because that's what my dad taught me. He taught me to hate. He told me to make Riverside safe for people like us and to keep people like her." He nodded to Maya in their place. The room was silent. Every breath held. "My dad never told anyone about my grandmother. He said if people found out it would ruin our reputation, but she's my family. She took care of me when I was sick. And I did something terrible." He swallowed, hands shaking. "My father told me to switch out her pain medication for fake pills to save money, to teach her not to make a fuss. I did it. I did it to my own grandmother. To all the people at Meadowbrook Estates, I became the monster my father wanted me to be." Tears streamed down his face, and his grandmother reached out, squeezing his hand. "It's never too late to tell the truth, child," she whispered. Brandon turned to face the judge. The jury. And then finally, Maya. "I bullied you, Maya. I hurt you because I thought it would make me stronger. Because my father told me to. I'm sorry for the dress, for the hallway, for every time I called you less than you are. I was a coward. I see that now." The defense attorney tried to object, but the judge waved him down. "Let the boy speak." Brandon drew a trembling breath. "But I want to do the right thing now. Everything Maya said was true. The mayor ran the scholarship ring. He made Mrs. Porter and Principal Lawson follow orders. If anyone tried to expose it, he threatened their families, their futures. He threatened mine. But Maya never gave up. She risked everything. I'm sorry for what I did, but I hope I can help stop it from happening again." He turned to the mayor, his own father. Voice breaking. "You always wanted a legacy. Dad, this is it. I won't protect your lies anymore." The courtroom, already tense, now crackled with something new. The birth of conscience in a place hollowed out by power. The prosecutor looked at the jury, the camera crews, and the crowded gallery. No further questions. Maya felt her heart clench, a bittersweet ache for all the wounds inflicted and the courage it took to begin to heal. The judge nodded, his voice resonant. "This testimony will stand as evidence not only of the crimes committed, but of the power of truth and redemption." Brandon wheeled his grandmother back, head bowed. Before leaving the witness stand, he met Maya's eyes. "I'm sorry for the dress and I'm sorry for everything." She nodded, her reply soft but strong. "You did the right thing now, Brandon. That's what matters." Around them, jurors wiped their eyes. The public gallery, once skeptical, even hostile, sat in stunned silence. For the first time, many saw the faces of the victims and the guilty with painful clarity. And in that fragile stillness, justice felt both closer and more human than ever before. The verdict was read in a courtroom so silent that the tick of the old clock sounded like a drum. Reporters lined the back, pens poised, cameras flashing at every shift and sigh. Maya sat with her father and grandmother in the front row, hands clasped, hope and apprehension winding together in her chest. The judge this time, a visiting federal magistrate, read the charges in a clear, unwavering voice. On the counts of murder, conspiracy, and fraud, we, the jury, find Mayor Thompson guilty. A gasp ran through the gallery. The mayor's face, usually impassive, twisted in rage and disbelief. He tried to stand to speak, but the bailiff's hand landed firmly on his shoulder. The judge continued, for these crimes, the sentence is life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. All assets to be seized and directed toward reparations for the victims of this scheme and for the rebuilding of Riverside's Community Health Center. Maya saw families clutch each other. Elderly women wiped tears from their cheeks. Old men sat up straighter. For the first time, the victims of Riverside's silence had been seen and heard. Next came Mrs. Porter. The judge's tone remained just as firm on the counts of elder abuse, drug trafficking, and conspiracy. The sentence is 20 years in a federal penitentiary. Mrs. Porter did not protest. Her eyes hollow with exhaustion. Searched the crowd, seeking forgiveness, finding none. As the handcuffs clicked over her wrists, she turned, meeting Maya's gaze. The sneer that had haunted so many classrooms was gone. In its place, only regret, a haunted knowledge of everything lost. Brandon stood last, his lawyer beside him, pale and trembling. The judge addressed him directly. "You have committed grave wrongs, Mr. Thompson. Yet the court recognizes your cooperation, your testimony, and your efforts to repair the harm you've done. Your sentence is suspended. With 5 years of supervised probation, 1,000 hours of community service, and mandatory counseling, your path forward will not be easy, but you have begun to rebuild your soul." Brandon nodded, his face streaked with tears. His grandmother, sitting nearby, wept quietly, grief for what had happened. Relief for the chance her grandson had to make things right. Then came the final orders. The mayor's sprawling estate, his bank accounts, all holdings in his wife's and son's name seized, liquidated, and transferred to a victims fund overseen by the federal courts. Funds were immediately earmarked for the creation of a new health clinic and a scholarship program for children of the town's poorest families. For once, Riverside's power served the powerless. When the formalities ended, Judge Harrison was asked to speak not as a jurist, but as a citizen and a father. He stood before the crowd, voice quiet, but resonant. No one stands above the law and no one should be left behind because of the color of their skin, their age or the station to which they were born. Justice is not perfect. It is hard, slow and often comes too late. But when we demand it, when we stand together, it can heal. Today, we do not erase what happened, but we begin to restore what was lost. Applause rose, not loud but steady, carrying the weight of hope more than triumph. Maya watched Mrs. Porter being led away, her step unsteady, her head bowed. This time the woman looked back, not with arrogance, but with a broken sort of remorse. For the first time, Maya felt something close to pity for the woman who had tormented her. The cycle of cruelty had ended, but the cost of silence would linger for years. Brandon passed Maya on his way out. He paused, eyes shining, searching for words. Maya offered a small nod. Nothing needed to be said. The healing would take time for all of them. As people filed from the courtroom, the town's elders lingered to shake Maya's hand, to hug her grandmother, to thank Judge Harrison for not letting go. The air felt clearer, lighter. Outside, The clouds parted and sunlight spilled over the courthouse. Steps, a quiet, gentle promise of new beginnings. In the aftermath, a sense of peace slowly returned to Riverside. The shame of its leaders was matched only by the courage of those who refused to be silenced. The headlines told the story of downfall and justice. But the truer story was whispered on every porch and in every home. This time the right people paid the price. And though the wounds would not vanish and forgiveness would take root slowly, the storm had finally passed. 6 months after the storm, Riverside High was transformed. The banners for graduation fluttered in the June breeze, sunlight spilling over a crowd, far more diverse and hopeful than any in the school's history. The old guard was gone, replaced by a new principal, a new board, teachers who greeted students with open eyes and hearts. No more whispers in the halls. No more fear in its place. The uncertain beautiful silence of healing. Maya stood backstage in her gown, nerves prickling her skin. She glanced down at her hands. Then to the white dress she wore beneath her robe, the same dress that had been torn and bloodied, now stitched with golden thread. The kintsugi seam shimmered, not hidden, not ashamed, but celebrated. Every scar, every line, a memory of what she had survived. The ceremony began. Names were called. Applause rising and falling like waves. When Maya's name echoed through the loudspeakers, valedictorian, Maya Grace Harrison. The auditorium erupted. She walked to the podium, feeling every step echo the journey she and her family had made. Her father and grandmother sat in the front row, hands clasped, eyes shining with tears. She looked at her classmates, at parents and siblings and neighbors, at faces both familiar and changed by what had come before. When she spoke, her voice was steady, full of all she had learned and all she refused to forget. When I started at Riverside High, I thought the hardest lesson would be algebra. I thought history was just something we learned from books. But this year, we lived history together. We learned that justice is not given, but earned sometimes painfully, sometimes slowly. We learned that silence can be a weapon, and so can kindness. That dignity doesn't come from what you wear or where you're from, but how you stand when the world tries to knock you down. She paused, glancing at her gown at the flash of gold where the dress peeked through. There was a time when I thought being broken meant being weak. But my grandmother taught me a different story. In Japan, when pottery breaks, it's not thrown away. The cracks are mended with gold. The brokenness becomes a part of the beauty. We call it kintsugi. Today I wear my scars proudly. Stitched into this dress, not to hide them, but to honor them. They tried to tear my dress. They could never tear my dignity. The hall was silent. In the front row, Judge Harrison wiped a tear. Pride and heartbreak mingling in his smile. Josephine squeezed his hand, whispering, "She did it, James. She really did it." Maya's voice grew soft, yet carried to every corner of the room. There are people in this world who will try to define you by your pain, your silence, your differences. Don't let them. Use your voice. Use your courage. Even when you are afraid, especially when you are afraid, there is no shame in having scars. They are proof that you survived and that survival can change the world. She looked out, searching the crowd. Near the back, Brandon stood by the janitor's closet, hands in his work gloves, head bowed in a gesture of respect. Their eyes met. Maya nodded once, and he nodded back an apology, an understanding, a silent promise to be better. As the ceremony ended, Maya stepped forward with the other graduates. When the moment came, she tossed her cap into the air, watching it soar around her. Laughter and shouts and the soft music of hope. On the big screen above the stage, words appeared in bold. The Grace Memorial Scholarship Fund established in honor of Maya's mother, dedicated to supporting low-income students and the elderly of Riverside. The applause was thunderous. Faces in the crowd glistened with tears, some for the pain that had passed, some for the future still unwritten. Maya hugged her father and grandmother, letting the moment settle in her bones. The white dress beneath her gown, patched, golden, unbroken, seemed to glow in the light. As families poured from the auditorium, Riverside High felt for the first time like a place where every student truly belonged, where stories of struggle became legacies of hope, where scars were honored and dignity was never again up for sale. And in the hush after the ceremony, as the sun set and the world felt new, Maya whispered a promise to the memory of her mother to carry her legacy forward. Gold seams and all. Justice isn't just a verdict. It's a journey shaped by courage, scars, and the refusal to stay silent in the face of cruelty. Maya's fight proves that dignity cannot be torn, and even brokenness can become a legacy of hope. What part of Maya's journey resonated with you the most? And how would you have stood up for justice? If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful journeys of resilience and truth.